Have you ever kept walking every day yet suddenly felt less stable instead of stronger? That question hit me hard after 75, when walking no longer gave me confidence, only quiet fear. I remember the something I had never felt before, uncertainty in my own legs. For years walking had been my anchor. Doctors praised it. Friends swore by it. I walked every morning believing I was protecting my independence. But slowly something changed. My legs felt heavy, not tired, heavy. Turning around required more attention. Stepping off a curb felt risky. I started scanning the ground instead of enjoying the walk. That's when I realized the real problem wasn't my motivation. It was control. What no? One talks about after 75 is that you can still walk daily and quietly lose stability. Walking keeps you moving forward, but it doesn't train your body to react when something unexpected happens. It doesn't prepare you for uneven ground, quick turns, or sudden stops. I didn't feel weak. I felt disconnected, like my legs and brain were no longer speaking the same language. The fear wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It whispered. It made me choose flatter paths. It made me avoid walking at night. It made me reach for walls and railings without realizing it. And that's the most dangerous part, when fear slowly reshapes your habits before you notice. One morning, standing still before leaving the house, I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if walking isn't enough anymore? What if stability, balance, and confidence require something different after 75? That question stayed with me all day, and by the end of that week, it pushed me to try something I had never considered before. A simple movement that didn't involve distance, speed, or steps, but control. And that's where everything began to shift. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I wasn't walking far enough, fast enough, or consistently enough. So I did what most people do. I added more steps, longer routes, fewer breaks. But something strange happened. The more I relied on walking alone, the less secure I felt in my own body. Not weaker, just less stable. Here's what I slowly began to understand through experience, not theory. Walking is repetitive. It moves you forward in a straight line at a predictable rhythm. After 75, that repetition stops challenging the systems that actually keep you upright. Your balance, your reaction speed, your ability to correct a misstep. Those things quietly fade if they're not directly trained. I noticed it first when stopping. Not while walking, but when I had to slow down, turn, or change direction. My legs felt unsure. My feet didn't land where I expected. That's because walking mostly strengthens momentum, not control. It doesn't teach your body how to stabilize when movement suddenly changes, and real life is full of those moments. Another thing no one warned me about was circulation in the legs. Walking gets blood moving, yes, but it doesn't always push circulation deep enough into the smaller stabilizing muscles. I could feel it, that heavy leg sensation, especially later in the day. Not pain, not injury. Just a dull weakness that made balance harder to trust. What scared me most was realizing that walking had become automatic. My brain was no longer fully involved. And after 75, when the connection between brain and muscles needs more attention, automatic movement isn't enough. Stability depends on awareness, coordination, and small corrective muscles that walking barely touches. I wasn't declining because I stopped moving. I was declining because I was moving in only one way. Forward. Same pace, same pattern, and my body adapted by shutting down what it no longer needed: balance reactions, lateral control, postural strength. That realization hit hard, because it meant the solution wasn't to quit walking, it was to stop depending on it alone. And once I accepted that, I started looking for something different, something that didn't involve distance, speed, or endurance, but taught my body how to stay in control again. That's when I had my biggest insight. The turning point came on a day when I wasn't even exercising. I was standing in the kitchen, reaching to turn around, and for a split second my body didn't respond the way my mind expected it to. I didn't fall, I didn't stumble, but I had to pause. And that pause told me everything. My legs were strong enough to walk, but they weren't ready to react. That's when it finally clicked for me. Strength wasn't the issue. I could still get up from a chair. I could still walk a decent distance. What I was losing was control, the quiet, invisible ability to stabilize myself when movement changed. Balance isn't something you notice until it starts slipping away. I began paying attention to the small moments. Standing on one foot to put on socks felt harder. Turning my head while walking made my steps less certain. Even stopping suddenly required more focus than it used to. These weren't signs of weakness. They were signs that my balance system was no longer being challenged or maintained. After 75, your body doesn't lose balance because you stop moving. It loses balance because you stop sending the right signals between your brain and your legs. Those signals come from specific movements that force your body to adjust, stabilize, and correct itself. Walking doesn't do that very well. It lets your body stay comfortable. I also noticed something else. My posture had subtly changed. I leaned forward just a little more. My steps became cautious. That cautiousness felt safe, but it actually made my balance worse. When you move carefully all the time, your body stops practicing recovery, and recovery is what prevents falls. What surprised me most was how fast this awareness grew once I noticed it. The fear I had been carrying wasn't about falling itself. It was about not trusting my own reactions anymore. That trust doesn't come from miles walked. It comes from training your body to respond. That realization changed how I looked at movement entirely. I stopped asking, "How far can I walk?" and started asking, "Can I control my body in small, unpredictable moments?" And when I found a movement that answered that question, everything started to feel different. What surprised me most was how ordinary it looked. No machines, no intensity, no sweat. Just a simple movement I could do at home, holding onto a chair if I needed to. At first I almost dismissed it. I remember thinking, this can't possibly be enough. But I'd already learned that enough after 75 doesn't mean harder. It means smarter. The first time I tried it, I felt something walking had never given me. Awareness. My feet were talking to the floor. My legs were adjusting in real time. My core woke up without strain. I wasn't moving forward. I was staying in place and forcing my body to stabilize itself. That alone felt new. What this exercise did was simple but powerful. It asked my body to make tiny corrections constantly. Left, right, slight shifts, micro adjustments. These are the exact things you need when you step on uneven ground or turn too quickly. Walking never forced me to practice that. This did. At first I could only do it for a short time. My legs felt shaky, not weak, alert. That's when I knew it was working. Those small, stabilizing muscles, the ones that protect you when you lose balance, were finally being used again. I felt circulation deep in my legs, not just surface warmth. My feet felt more connected, less numb. Within days, something changed in how I moved through the house. Standing up felt more controlled. Turning felt smoother. I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't hesitating either, and the biggest surprise came outside. On my next walk, I realized I wasn't watching the ground anymore. My confidence had quietly returned. This wasn't about replacing walking. It was about preparing my body for real life. Stops, turns, distractions, uneven steps. That's what stability really is. And the more consistent I became with this one simple movement, the more my body remembered how to protect itself. I hadn't added more exercise, I had added the right one. And that changed everything about how safe I felt in my own body again. The changes didn't arrive all at once. They showed up quietly, in moments I hadn't been paying attention to before. One morning I stood up from a chair and realized I hadn't used my hands. Another day, I turned quickly to answer a question and didn't feel that brief rush of instability I had grown used to. My body just responded. The first thing I noticed was my legs. They no longer felt heavy by late afternoon. That dull, dragging sensation that used to make me cautious started fading. Not because I was stronger, but because circulation felt deeper, more even. My calves and ankles felt alive again, like blood was actually reaching the places responsible for balance, not just movement. Then my posture began to change without effort. I wasn't reminding myself to stand tall. It just happened. When your balance improves, your body stops leaning forward defensively. I felt more centered, less rushed, less guarded. That alone made walking feel different. My steps became quieter, more controlled. I wasn't bracing for mistakes anymore. Confidence returned in small but meaningful ways. I stopped scanning the ground constantly. I felt comfortable turning my head while walking. I could slow down or stop without feeling unsure. Those are the moments that matter after 75. Falls don't usually happen while moving straight ahead. They happen during transitions. And those transitions started feeling safe again. Emotionally, something shifted too. The background anxiety I didn't know I was carrying began to lift. When you trust your body, you move differently. You leave the house more easily. You say yes instead of hesitating. That sense of independence doesn't come from endurance. It comes from control. What surprised me most was how walking itself improved once stability returned. My gait felt smoother. My pace felt natural. Walking stopped feeling like a test and became enjoyable again. It wasn't doing more that fixed it. It was doing something smarter before walking. And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about one exercise. It was about understanding why certain movements protect the body after 75, and why relying on walking alone leaves critical systems untrained. That realization changed how I looked at movement entirely. What I finally understood is that after 75, the body doesn't fail because it's weak. It fails because it's unprepared. Prepared for imbalance, prepared for sudden changes, prepared for moments when life doesn't move in a straight line. Walking trains forward motion. Life demands much more than that. This type of movement works differently because it wakes up systems walking barely touches. Balance isn't just about legs, it's about communication. Your brain, inner ear, feet, and deep stabilizing muscles must talk to each other constantly. When that conversation fades, reaction time slows. And that's when falls happen. Walking is predictable. Same rhythm, same direction, same surface most of the time. Your body goes on autopilot. But these stability-focused movements force attention. They create small challenges your nervous system has to solve in real time. And every time it solves them, those neural pathways get stronger. I also noticed how much circulation changed. Not surface circulation, deep circulation. The kind that feeds the small muscles around the ankles, knees, and hips. Those muscles don't power movement. They protect it. And when they're underused, legs start feeling heavy, unresponsive, unstable. That heaviness isn't age, it's neglect. Another key difference is posture. Stability training automatically corrects alignment. When your balance improves, your spine stacks better, your head sits more naturally over your shoulders. That alone reduces the risk of falling because your center of gravity stays where it should be. Walking doesn't fix that. It often reinforces poor posture. What really stayed with me is how this kind of movement restores confidence without effort. Not confidence you talk yourself into, confidence your body gives you back. When your reactions sharpen, fear loses its grip. You stop overthinking each step. You stop moving defensively. After a while, I realized this wasn't an exercise at all. It was maintenance, like tuning a system that had been ignored too long. And once that system came back online, everything else worked better, including walking. That insight completely reshaped how I structured my days. I didn't add more time, I added intention. And once I saw how powerful that was, I knew I couldn't go back to relying on walking alone ever again. Once I understood what my body actually needed after 75, my routine stopped being complicated. In fact, it became simpler, but more intentional. I no longer started my day thinking about how far I would walk, or how many steps I needed to hit. I started by asking a different question. Am I preparing my body to stay in control today? That one shift changed everything. I made stability the priority, not distance. Before walking, before errands, before anything else, I gave my body the signal it had been missing for years. I reminded my nervous system how to react, adjust, and stabilize. And when I did walk, it felt like a bonus, not a requirement I was clinging to out of fear. What surprised me was how little time it took. This wasn't a long workout, it wasn't exhausting, but the impact carried through the entire day. I felt steadier in the morning, more confident by afternoon, less cautious at night. The small daily habits added up in ways walking alone never did. I also stopped feeling guilty on days I didn't walk. That guilt used to push me to move, even when my body felt off. Now I understood that movement without control can actually increase risk. Some days, stability mattered more than steps, and honoring that made me feel smarter, not weaker. Over time, this approach changed how I aged emotionally, not just physically. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could do and started valuing how safely I could live. Getting up, turning, carrying groceries, walking on uneven ground, those are the real tests after 75. And those were the moments that started feeling reliable again. I never quit walking. I simply stopped depending on it as my only tool. Walking became enjoyable, again because it wasn't carrying the burden of protecting my independence by itself. That responsibility shifted to movements that actually train balance, circulation, and control. And once that happened, I realized something powerful. Aging well isn't about doing more. It's about doing what your body truly needs now, not what worked 20 years ago. If you stayed with me until this moment, I want to thank you. That tells me you're not just watching. You're thinking about your future, your independence, and the way you want to live after 75. And that matters more than any exercise or routine. If this video helped you see walking in a new way, do one simple thing right now. Subscribe to the channel. This space is for people who want to stay stable, confident, and in control of their bodies, without extreme workouts or empty promises. Before you go, leave a comment and write this exact sentence. I choose stability over fear. I read every comment, and that one small action helps. Reinforce the commitment you're making to yourself today, and if this message resonated with you, please leave a like. It tells the platform this conversation matters and helps this reach others who may be silently struggling with balance and confidence right now. Finally, don't stop here. There's another video appearing on your screen that builds directly on what we talked about today. Click it and keep going, because staying independent after 75 isn't about luck. It's about the choices you make every day. Thank you for being here.